And straight I will repair to the curragh of Kildare. For it's there I'll find tidings of my dear.
Hello and welcome back. It is episode 5 of Lilies Livin with Brian McDonald and Kevin O'Neill. We can breathe again after that weekend of action for Kildare. We said towards the end of last week's pod that it was a very busy week in store. It's all started last Wednesday in Connacht when the Miners won their Leinster semi-final. They beat Wicklow comfortably. The ladies' camogie team were pipped by Meath in the Leinster intermediate final over the weekend in Auckland. The ladies' football team went one better. Thankfully, they won the intermediate championship. They beat Wexford by 3 goals and 7 points to 1 goal and 7 points. So congratulations to the squad there. And then, of course, in Carrick on Saturday evening, the under-20 team, unfortunately, they were defeated in their All-Ireland final. Hard luck to Brian Flanagan and his squad, but really what a great campaign that was. Leinster champions, definitely a lot of great talent as well coming through that squad that I think we can expect to see in the senior setup over the next couple of years. And then the seniors, of course, were in Croke Park on Sunday afternoon. Back-to-back Leinster finals now after a 3-point win over Westmeath. In the end, it was 121 to 215. It was good scoring. To be honest, I was expecting to have probably a more comfortable win. Maybe Westmeath got into it sort of more towards the end of the second half. I was working. I did buy the game on GA Go, so I was watching it. You were there. You were in the hill, as you told us last week. You made the trip over from Sligo on Sunday morning. How did you get on? How was the day?
It's a great day. Yeah, great day catching up with the Nace lads, all the school pals. Made the trip down yesterday on a lovely Erin Road Air train from Sligo. I felt like I was lost out at sea the minute we stopped at Mullingar because I filled up with all the Westmeath lads. They were pretty excited for the match, which I didn't expect. Like, they're all buzzing. A lot of young fellas now, and I think they were hopefully expecting a turnover. And to be honest with you, they weren't far off it. Like, on the day, you know, it ended up a 3-point win for Kildare. I think it's fair to say we probably were the better team over the 70 minutes, but towards the end, the momentum was with Westmeath, and you know, it was a one kick of a ball in the difference really before we were going into extra time. So a little bit of a nervy finish. Comfortable overall, I would say, but I don't know if it bodes exactly well now for Leinster final in 2 weeks against the Dubs, who seem to really, you know, found their form back at Croke Park in the championship.
Yeah, I was speaking to you briefly before the game, and we were both quite bullish. Well, anyone who's listened to the pod will know that I have been quite bullish of our chances of a deep run in the All Ireland this year. And I was saying that we needed to. I would say like a 2-point win would be disastrous, and we needed 8 or 9 or 10-point win to go into the final with a bit of confidence. I suppose from the very start, you know, we were a goal down within 15 seconds. We were opened up a bit too easily, weren't we? But we did kick on. Like, we were never in doubt. I think we were like 1-6 or 1-8 to 1-1 up at one stage, and it was just the second half. I felt like we never got out of third gear really. Maybe the second half, like maybe it was sort of job done early. You know, we were 6-7 points clear at stages throughout the game, and maybe some of the lads were thinking, you know, they don't have to go the extra mile here, and it's just all about seeing out the result. But you look at the Dubs then, like, they never just stay in third gear. They always put the foot on the throat and kill games off. I was definitely a lot more bullish before the weekend, looking forward to a Leinster final than maybe I am now looking forward to a Leinster final. But even with the Dubs, like, a lot of people were saying, obviously they were relegated from Division 2. We bet them in Newbridge, of course, the league campaign. There was a colleague of mine who's actually on the panel. He's played a couple of league games for Dublin, and he was always saying that the mood was always confident in camp, and that they weren't. A lot of people are not writing them off, but saying Kerry are the team to beat in the championship this year. But he was still adamant when I was talking to him in the lead up to the championship that, you know, they're not taking any of the sort of talk that's going on behind the scenes, and they're as bullish and as ready as ever. So I don't think it's going to be any sort of an easier task against the Dubs. Well, my hope is not that they've regressed, but that we've progressed and we can go toe to toe. And then my hope is, I suppose, that we didn't get out of third gear, and I hope there is more for us to give than that the game against Westmeath. Croke Park just worries me as well, though. Like, I saw someone on Twitter from Westmeath saying, oh, if this game wasn't in Croker, we would have beaten the Lilies. But I think it's different. I think if it wasn't in Croker, we would have won by an even wider margin. So we just need to get over this sort of Croker. We'll talk to our guest when he comes on. Tommy Moolick, of course, played in Croke Park many times for Kildare. And just is there, it's not only against the big teams that we sort of don't play to our best ability in Croke Park. It's against these sort of teams that we're expected to beat. Like at the weekend, we're expected to win by 7-8 points probably going into the game, but in the end it was only a 3-point win. So something we'll have to get over, Kev.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I think the Croke Park factor, it's worrying in the sense that, we were down until, or I was down to Tullamore with the lads the last day, and it was such a comfortable win, and it was such efficient play and great energetic performance, and you really got a sense that the lads coming off the bench and were eager to make their mark in the game and leave with a bit of a score and tally themselves. And the minute we get to Croker, I think we were all a little bit nervous about it, but our nerves were, met with conviction over the weekend there when we saw that a lot of interplay within that Kildare team was very much played within themselves. And even beyond that, like this whole Croke Park factor, if we want to become a top 6, dare I say, top 4 team in the country, you need to be able to play at Croke Park. Like that's the business end of the championship, and it's as simple as that. It's all well and good getting a qualifier run below in Longford and the other we'll say Division 3, Division 4 teams and put up big scoring margins against them. But if we want to make any progress in Leinster and even beyond that, like we need to get way over this. And look, to be fair, this management team, it definitely excites me because there's a lot of experience there, and from their own playing days within Croke Park, and arguably Kildare's best days were during that Glenn Ryan era when he was centre back, the late 90s, the early 90s, and we had some great performances in Croke Park. So hopefully they can kind of bring that to the table, as they progress in their tenure as the management set up with the Kildare seniors. But it's 2 weeks now till the Leinster final. As you said, they didn't really leave third gear. Hopefully now we can push on now. I'm sure there's going to be some tough conversations in the background. I actually listened to an off the ball interview with Glenn Ryan after the match, and like typical Glenn Ryan fashion, he wasn't giving nothing away, but you didn't get a sense he was overly happy. So yeah, let's see what he has kind of up his sleeve now.
We've a lot to discuss this week with our guest about the under-20s, of course, and his career and his club, and the review of the semi-final and the preview of the final. We've been to Naas, we've been to Eadstown, we've been to Ellistown, we've been to Comfy, and now we're up to Comfy's neighbours with a former Kildare midfielder. He had an inter-county career spanning nearly a decade. It is Leixlip man Tommy Moolick.
Lovely show and go from Tommy Moolick, and the strike is clean.
Tommy Moolick, thanks a million for joining us today.
Oh, thanks very much for having me on, Brian.
All right, I just want to touch upon something that before we crack into your sort of club and Kildare career. I want to touch upon something that we haven't actually asked our previous guests, and that's just your upbringing in the sport. So, from a young age, when you were a kid, was it always Gaelic football you played, or did you try your hand at a few other sports?
Yeah, I suppose if you go into the Moolick household up in Leixlip, I suppose you're just not too far away from a Gaelic football. But yeah, I suppose I tried every sport when I was younger. I played soccer there for a small bit, played a small bit with Shelburne when I was younger, played a bit of hurling. And then I got to a stage there when I was probably under 16, going into minor kind of campaign. And I had to decide between probably Gaelic football and hurling. And I suppose, I think at the time, Brian Murphy was the manager of the minor football team, and he kind of enticed me. And it's probably better at the Gaelic football, to be honest, overall. But I kind of stuck with that then at the end. And probably my brother and my sister, who are mad into Gaelic football, my brother would have been involved with Port Nolan when he was Kildare manager. And my sister, I suppose my sister has won the most in the household, unfortunately. But yeah, she's won the most in the household. So she's an All-Ireland, 2 All-Irelands actually, and a few Leinsters there. So I was kind of always enticed by Gaelic football. My family, my mum and my dad would have been involved in Leixlip GA heavily, in particular. So it was always kind of the first love of mine, to be honest.
Very fair. Yeah, you speak about the sort of championships that your siblings have won. Leixlip have sort of I suppose the elusive championship has evaded them down through the years. You were in a final, an intermediate final in 2019. Forgive me now if you were in a different one, but that's what my research got to me. I think he's played Salins in the semi-final. You were from reports I read, you were sort of integral and had a great match that day, but ultimately came up short against Monasterevin in the final. It appeared to be a low scoring, cagey affair. Monasterevin won. It was 1-8 to 7 points, I think. Can you tell us much about that final?
Yeah, I suppose. Look, we had a very young team going into it. 2 or 3 have stepped away since, Kieran Fadge and a few others, but a lot of the bones of that team have stayed on. But at that time, like I said, very, very young, probably a bit naive at times as well, especially going up against Monasterevin. Monasterevin that day were defensively very, very good, and they had Porrick Nash up front, and he seemed to be on fire that day as well, which didn't help our cause. And they bet us on the counter attack a lot that day. And unfortunately, like you said, we've been kind of doing the nearly team over the last while. We got into that intermediate final, and unfortunately we came up short there. And then the year after, we came up against Kilcock, and they went on to the final against Clogherinco, and that was close enough as well. And then last year we came up short against Ballymore. So yeah, we've been kind of thereabouts the last couple of years. Just, I don't know. We need to get something to get over the line, that kind of a way. Especially that's probably one regret from 2019, where we didn't get over the line and get back up, because that the year before we actually came down. So it would have been brilliant to try and come back up straight away. But the intermediate championship seems to be is a very tough championship to win. There's a few teams down there that will give most of the senior teams a good run for their money anyway. And you can see in the Division 2 league at the moment, where there's teams there that would be fairly strong in the senior championship that are coming up short against intermediate sides.
Yeah, I mean, you spoke there briefly about Ballymore beating us in the semi-final last year. They bet you twice. They bet you in the group stage by a point, and then they bet you by a couple of more points, I think, in the semi-final. Then they went on to play Kilcock in the final and lost by a replay. So it is really close there. I suppose this year going into it, I suppose you're looking to go one further and not only get to the final, but to lift the championship. You well believe in your ability to do that. Yeah,
like I said, there's a lot of teams there, I suppose. Ourselves, Ballymore, Kilcullen, who are after coming up there, are going very well in Division 2. I suppose Monasterevin after coming back down, 2 Mile House, and Castle Dermot. There's a few teams, like there's a pick of teams there that you could pick to say, yeah, we're aiming for the championship. So no more than them. We're, as Leixlip, we want to go on and go forward with the championship. We've a few, I suppose, very good results over the last number of years in Senior B, and I suppose for Leixlip GA the last while, or for a couple of years, we've had a few problems getting a lot of minor teams together and getting young players in through the panel. But in the last 5 years, for the first time in a while, or the last 2 or 3 years anyway, in the first time in a while, we've been definitely getting a few new bloods into the team, which has been brilliant for us, because for a long time we've had problems with lads staying around or lads emigrating or whatever, having issues for us. So we're hopeful more than ever, I suppose. Talking to people, leaks of people around, they seem to be really, really hopeful, especially after the last result beating Maynooth, who I think they got into the semi-final of the seniors last year. So we're moving in the right direction, but we're not the finished article, if that makes sense.
Yeah, is that Maynooth turn over the weekend there? I'm just having a look actually at the league table here for Division 2. So there's 2 points between the top 5. Just Kilcullen, Maynooth on 12, then Johnstown Bridge, Leixlip, and Kilcock all on 10 points. I think yourselves and Johnstown Bridge have a game in hand over the other 3. So you're well in the mix. Your points difference is plus 28. Johnstown Bridge is plus 45, Maynooth plus 50. It's very, very tight there. I suppose this is the main aim, I suppose, now at the moment before championship. Like, it would be great to win a bit of silverware. I'm not sure. Can you just explain how the sort of format works? Like the top 5 sort of splits away from the bottom 5.
Yeah. So you play everybody in the Division 2. Everybody plays each other, and then eventually the top 5 go into kind of a winners group, if you want to call it, and then you play the top 5, and the bottom 5 go into a kind of a loser group, or bottom 4 go into a loser group, and they play each other and see who gets relegated. So yeah, it's a bit of excitement, I suppose. There's a lot of games in it. That's what I found this year. Probably one complaint that I'd have, probably, like, we haven't really had much weeks off. So if you get injured at all, if you pick up any injuries as a team, and we've definitely felt it this year, where 2 or 3 of our probably a few of our starters would have picked up an injury and had definitely hampered us in a few games, and maybe other teams. And like I said, it's for every team. Every team has picked up a few injuries, I'd say, which probably isn't with the fixture list. It's literally every week. The only time I suppose we had the reason why we have a game in hand, we played the Kyo Cup final against Castledermot in the middle of the league, but then we have to play this week. We're playing on Wednesday and we're playing on Saturday, so it's busy, it's hectic. I thought I'd get a break when I finished up with county, but it seems to be actually busier than ever, which is good. But yeah, no complaints.
Definitely, yeah, and best of luck for the rest of that league campaign and into the championship as well. Last week we were speaking with David Slattery from Comfy, sort of neighbouring club, and we were asking him about the sort of rivalry between the two clubs, and we did get a question in on Twitter during the week from Chris Foley, and he said it would be interesting to get an insight from Tommy into the Leixlip Comfy rivalry. Does it ever get a bit rowdy around the town if the two sides meet each other?
Yeah, I suppose it does. I suppose you know all the players. Like you know every single player on the Comfy team, and I'd say that Dave would know every single player on the Leixlip team. And there is that healthy rivalry. Like when you're on the pitch, I suppose you're going for the ball, and there probably is a few scuffles and stuff like that, which is brilliant. You need that contact in it, especially in a rivalry game. And to be honest, you love playing against Comfy. Unfortunately, we haven't played against them in the last while because we've been down in the trenches in intermediate. But yeah, it's brilliant. It's really enjoyable when you play games like that. And there is that kind of, you know, when you're in the town and it's maybe a league game coming up or a championship game, you know, there's that extra bit of bite that you want to get one over your near neighbours and make sure that you're the top of the town rather than the other crowd, and you have that nice rivalry. And even when I remember playing Dave Slats in particular and going down to training or going down in the car with you, Lynch, a few times when back in the earlier years when I started off, and you're playing against Comfy or after beating them or losing against them, there's definitely then dirty digs that are going in on the car down. And yeah, there's a want there to beat them all right. There's that little needle that you probably need. It's in most games, but definitely if you're not up for it against Comfy, there's not many other games you're going to get up for.
Could I actually ask you, Tommy, on that? Obviously, I agree with you. I think it's a great thing when there's a nice like local rivalry between clubs. But let's say when you bring that to the inter-county setup, then like obviously you might look at Moorfield and Sarsfield over the years, or yourselves and the Comfy lads. Like, how do you kind of put that rivalry to bed when you're playing with each other then?
No, yeah, I understand where you're coming from. I suppose, well, what my thing is anyway, what goes on the pitch stays on the pitch as such. But I suppose it's not as difficult as you think. A lot of lads would know each other on and off the pitch. In particular, like you're talking about Sarsfields and Moorfield, they'd probably meet each other on the regular in county finals. Like I'm working in Patrician Secondary School. Sure, a lot of them would actually go to school together and would have grown up together and would know each other. And it's kind of a given where you're going to give it all for your club. But like I remember playing games. Like I played against Kevin Feely in the middle of the field. I remember two of us beating the head off each other, but then the next Tuesday would be best of friends, like going in for a game, like so, or the next day you're training. So yeah, it is that fine line. But when it comes into an inter-county setup, I suppose it's more enclosed. You don't really listen to the outside a lot, and you're kind of in a different attitude or different mentality where you're in it together. And I suppose when you play with Kildare, it's an honour to represent Kildare first of all, but you have to both be working together. Otherwise, you're going nowhere really. And yeah, with rivalries with that, I suppose it's just put to the side and you have to go on, or else you'll just fade completely.
Yeah, so we'll move on to your Kildare career now. You represented Kildare at nearly every grade, I think, growing up, sort of minors 21 level. You played in Leinster finals all the way up as well. You captained in 2013 the under-21s to a Leinster title, beating Longford in the final, I believe. Was that a very proud night for you, your family, the club?
Yeah, it was massively proud. I suppose that's one night that I'll always look on very favourably. My dad's from Longford as well, so there was that extra bit of spice there as well, which really enjoyable. That night was great. It was there was a lot of pressure on that night, I suppose. We moved well and we had a good minor team up to that point, and a lot of the under-21 team that day actually would have had senior inter-county experience as well. So if you looked at the bones of the inter-county team, maybe the last 4 or 5 years, it wouldn't be too far away from our under 21 team, to be honest. So there was a lot of pressure that day. Yeah, it was great to win the Leinster down in Portlaoise that night. The only pity we had, I suppose, one regret probably would be the Galway game that we played in the semi-final. And again, looking at the bare bones of their team, probably that 21s team would make up most of their senior team as well. We probably left it behind us that night. And yeah, that was probably one regret afterwards, that we didn't push on and really go for the All-Ireland. Probably one thing I was jealous of the lads at the weekend, actually getting to go into the All-Ireland and play that.
Still a fantastic achievement to captain your county to the
definitely.
Leinster title. At senior level then, you played under 4 different managers. You had McGeaney, Jason Ryan, Cian O'Neill and Jack O'Connor. We've spoken to the lads in previous episodes of the pod. I think Lepper and Emma Bolton spoke very highly about McGeaney. Slots last week then spoke about how good of a mentor that Cian O'Neill was for him. Who did you enjoy working under most, or who had the biggest influence maybe on you?
Yeah, I suppose I suppose we're all different managers with all different styles. I was only a young lad. I was probably brought in 2010 starting off. And to be honest, that was an unbelievable experience. Kildare getting into an All-Ireland semi-final. Now I was only turning 18 at that time. We just lost a minor championship or minor semi-final against Longford. And I was brought in, myself and Fionn Dowling were brought in that evening or the week after under McGeaney. I suppose giving me my first go at the intercounty team was a big thing. And just, I suppose, I wouldn't even say managers. I think the players at that time would have had a big influence on me. The likes of John Doyle, Dermot Early, Mick Foley, going into that kind of dressing room and that kind of, I suppose, going to training with them kind of legends of Kildare GA kind of gave me, I had to pinch my arm sometimes. I remember going into the first training session, my dad meeting, I think Kieran McGeaney, but me going in, I sat down in the seat and I remember Mick Foley coming in and telling me to shift or something bad was going to happen. So stuff like that, like, it's memorable, but definitely I'd say more the players that I would have played with, like I said, the likes of Dermot Early, Johnny Doyle, the likes of them kind of that I would have been around would have probably had a bigger influence on me, definitely at a younger age. And then going into probably the later years with Cian O'Neill, I suppose, again, like probably Dave has said before, he had a different style, more so hands-on approach to the way he took trainings and elements like that, comparing to maybe McGeaney and even Jack O'Connor, where they would have had other backroom staff and they would have just kind of delegated the job. So yeah, different styles with each manager. I suppose Geaney was much more harder on lads compared to Jason Ryan, and then Cian O'Neill was much more I suppose more method to the madness, and then Jack O'Connor was much more old school, I would have felt, back to kind of McGeaney era.
Yeah, you're kind of echoing the sentiments that our previous guests have had about the sort of more senior players in the squads, the Johnny Doyle and the Dermot Early sort of being the players to look up to. What about, I do want to touch slightly on Jack O'Connor, because he hasn't really been discussed on this podcast yet.
Yeah.
Dare we mention his name?
Yeah, I think you're going to get a lot of slack off Kildare supporters.
The circumstance. But I want to know, how was it to play under him?
Yeah, look, personally, I probably didn't have the best experiences with him. I don't know if I'm the right man to ask, but yeah, look, he like I said, he's a bit more old school. He had Ross Glavin in with him, who was excellent, who obviously has been involved in Moorfield and Ballyteague, I think, up to that point, and brought a lot of, I suppose, very, very good qualities to training sessions and elements like that. Like I said, he's probably a bit more old school in his approach in terms of how he wants to play the game. Like, I suppose up to previous managers, we would have been, so even under McGeaney, we would have been seen as a very, very fit team. And I suppose Jack came in with this idea that he wanted a really kicking game and wants to go through the old school kind of Kerry kicking game, which was brilliant to bring in. And probably didn't get to see as much as Jack as I'd liked it, because under the circumstances with COVID and stuff like that, it was probably a weird year, the year that I was in there with Jack anyway, that was kind of training just all of a sudden halted and you didn't get to see as much of him. It was probably, I think my last game with Kildare properly would have been the Laois game in the league. And then it kind of came into championship. We only had 2 weeks to prepare for championship. So it was a bit of a stop-start year for me. But like I said, he was a bit more old school than the other managers that I would have had before.
Yeah, apologies to any of our listeners if I've touched a nerve discussing Jack O'Connor. I was actually down in Killarney with a group of friends before Christmas, and we had a few too many jars in us, and we ran into Jack O'Connor on the main street on the main street of Killarney, and one of my good friends who's a passionate Kildare supporter. I can't repeat what he said to Jack O'Connor.
Probably better off not.
Better off not repeating it and not getting into it. We'll move on now to a couple of games. Now we've discussed, we've discussed the Newbridge and Over, we've discussed sort of Dublin and Leinster finals. I want to touch on a different game that you played in throughout your career. So one that I liked was Cork in the qualifiers in 2015.
Yeah.
So things weren't going too well for Kildare at that time. Jason Ryan was in charge. We'd just been relegated to Division 3. I think it was a second successive relegation. Dublin hammered us home in the Leinster semi-final. Hadn't beaten Cork since 1928. And Cork were in the Munster Championship final against Kerry. And they actually should have won that. They went into a replay and they lost the replay. So it was final round of the qualifiers. I think 3,000 was all that went down to. It was in Tipperary.
Yeah.
And we shocked Cork with an 8-point win, some great score, and I think it was 121 to 113. And all of a sudden, despite 2 successive relegations, a hammering from the Dubs, we found ourselves in the quarter final of the All Ireland. Can you remember much about that game? And we were big underdogs going into that. Did we sort of catch Cork on the hop? Or I think they had a couple of after the replay, they had a couple of games in a row. They might have been a bit fatigued.
Yeah, I suppose. I don't know if it's a shock to it was a shock to ourselves. I think at that stage, I think the successive relegations wasn't really where we stood as a team. Look, it was a completely new team when you're looking at it. If you look at the end of Kieran McGeeney's era and then look at, I suppose, the start of Jason Ryan's era, there was a lot of new players coming in, including myself, really. I didn't really get much game time under Kieran McGeeney, and a lot of us didn't. And there was a lot of, I suppose, heavy retirements at that period of time. A lot of lads stepping away from the panel. And I suppose it was a difficult mantle to take up. But when we came up against Cork, I suppose down in Thurles, the memories of that evening, I suppose, like you said, we got a bit of a run on them at the start. And I remember Paul Cribben kicking a few probably skyscraper scores and a few other lads kicking ridiculous scores at times. But I don't think it was a shock. I think it was always in us. And I think at that stage, I would always feel that if we gave the best account of ourselves, I think we could have beaten anybody in the country. We just didn't always give the best account of ourselves, unfortunately. But yeah, the Cork team were a good team at that stage, like Cadigan in the middle, and I remember marking him and a few others. Like they had a serious team, but I think that day in particular, I remember us just being, right, we have to do something here. We really have to get back on track, try and make a bit of a splash here, because like you said, we shipped some heavy defeats. That Dublin team, unfortunately, we came up against too many times and lost too many times against them, and to be honest, probably heavily lost against them when I was involved, which unfortunately I have to bear the cross with. But yeah, I don't think it was a shock. I think we really went in there believing that we could actually beat any team we could, or who we came up against. And that day, like I said, some of the scores, some of the play that we played with was unbelievable. And I know there was only a couple of thousand down there, but it actually, at the end of it, it felt like a serious amount of people were down there. Proper championship game. And I remember lads coming onto the pitch afterwards, especially my own club members, and going absolutely crazy, and Kildare supporters going mad. And it was great to give them something to shout about, because up to that point, like, that year was a disaster altogether, to be honest, coming down from Division 2 and Division 1 in consecutive years. Jesus, that was a bad year, I suppose.
Yeah, I was going to say we don't have to discuss what happened next in the quarter final,
Yeah.
but I will actually, because it'd be interesting to hear your sort of thoughts about it. Like, yeah, it's like you said there, that the team went in thinking, that on your day you can beat any team in the country. You just come up against Kerry in the quarterfinals, who had drawn against Cork in the first game, obviously, and then we went on to beat Cork. 7 goals and 16 points to 10 points in Croke Park in the All Ireland quarterfinal. Is it a Croke Park thing? I think Kev might touch upon it later on in our chat here. That, like, even the most recent performance against Westmeath, you would have thought maybe if it's not in Croke Park, we win by a larger margin. But do you go into a dressing room after a defeat by that margin? Like, you must be looking around, and everyone must be having a long, hard look at themselves, thinking, you know, are we up to this? Maybe, like, where do we go from here? Like, that's too huge. Like, if you're looking to put a marker against the top teams, you play Dublin and Kerry, and it's annihilation in both.
Yeah, they're dark days, and unfortunately, I had a few of them, in particular in Croke Park, like you mentioned. But there's a few other games that I would have played in, and it probably, you're coming off the pitch and you want the world to swallow you up. You probably don't want to ever see football again at that straight after the game.
What's said in the dressing room? First thing that's said in the dressing room after that?
Nothing. It's pure silence. It's just pure disbelief of how we probably performed. I suppose a manager tries to come in and lift you up, but sometimes you just want to close the curtains and not come out of the house again. And there's definitely 3 or 4 games that I can remember in the past number of years where in my involvement in teams where that has actually been a case. Like, in that's definitely one of the games, the Kerry game in Croke Park, and one or two of the Dublin games. And definitely, I think the Carlow game a couple of years ago as well, where you're walking off the pitch and you feel like kind of ashamed at times that you put out a performance like you have, and people coming paying good money and family members, and you put in a load of effort yourself, obviously over a number of years, or even that year you're training, you've missed a load of stuff, and you ask yourself, is it worth it at times? It's just not, like, I just wasn't good enough them games in particular in Croke Park. I don't know if it's a Croke Park thing. I don't think it is. It's definitely a mental block at times. I suppose we haven't had the best performances, even when I was involved. We hadn't had the best performances in Croke Park since the end of the McGeaney era, but that was definitely a darker day for myself anyway.
I should have just stuck to, we don't need to talk about what happened next. You're
Depression session there now.
I know. How do I lift this up a bit? You retired actually towards the end of 2020. I think you were only 28 when you retired, which is quite young for intercounty. I could be wrong there. Injuries, they play a big part. I think you had three surgeries in your time with Kildare.
Yeah, I had three knee surgeries with Kildare, and actually had more when I was younger and when I was minor as well. I had 2 when I was minor as well. I have a few knee injuries. Yeah, I kind of did retire early, and people always ask me that question. Why did you finish up so? I met a few people even at the match there yesterday, and they were saying, "This is a good use." I was like, "Leave me alone." But
take it as a compliment.
Yeah, take it as a compliment, exactly. Yeah, I suppose at the time, probably confidence was an issue for myself. I wasn't getting much game time with Jack O'Connor. Things weren't going great. And I always said, and I said it to my family and my girlfriend, that at the time when I stopped enjoying the game with Kildare, I want to give it up. Like, I'm not going to stay in there, especially when you're knocking around the panel. And I remember I wasn't even selected for the panel against the Meath Championship game, where we unfortunately lost in the Leinster semi-final. I wasn't selected for the panel. And I remember Jack O'Connor coming to me and saying to me, this is your first game ever not being selected for a panel. And he was kind of going to me, do you want to come on the bus? And I remember turning around to him going, I'm no disrespect to you or no disrespect to anyone, but I don't think I'd be the right person to come on the bus, because I would have felt kind of out of place, first of all, and I probably wouldn't have known what to do. And I was just in a bad place, just getting dropped, and elements like that, probably not the nicest of feelings when you're a Gaelic footballer, but that comes with the territory. I suppose that's kind of practically the reason that I wasn't enjoying it. And when you stop enjoying it, you're better off taking a step back and saying that was me done. And look, I'm lucky enough to go back to my club and have a good go at it, like with my club, and plenty of time left with them.
Just to look at the weekend's action then, Tommy, obviously it was a big weekend of football and hurling and across the board for the Kildare GA underage and senior panels. But if we're going to look at the under 20s first, and their All-Ireland final against Tyrone, we can get into the game analysis in a second, but just to kind of at the start reflect on the whole campaign, I think we can all agree it was a really, really positive campaign from Brian Flanagan's men. Who do you see as a potential future star for the seniors from the under 20 panel?
Yeah, look, there's quite a few. It's a big step up from the under 20s. Look, like I know, and a lot of under 21 footballers since I was playing under 21 probably don't make the step up, but I think there is quite a few that could go on. You've Tommy Gill there, the wing half back. I've been quite impressed with him over the last couple of months. Really, really good going forward and really, really fast, and seemed to have the power to go forward and get on the ball. Adam Fanning in the full forward line as well. I think he's from Clane. I've seen him, and I'm involved in schools football, and I've seen him over the last number of years, and I think he really does have something to offer. And Brown from Selbridge in the corner forward in particular as well. I think, look, he didn't have the greatest of All Ireland finals, but up to that point, that Sligo game in particular, he really stood up. He was excellent when I think things were kind of being forced and stuff like that. He got on a serious amount of ball and scored a serious amount of scores, some great scores at that element. And there's a few like Daniel Lineman, the centre half forward. It's another footballer that I would have looked at there. Played against Kildare once or twice. He's a serious unit, big man, and definitely has the physicality to go on in the next couple of years, definitely to move on. And that's what you're looking for. You're not looking, look, there's sometimes you get freak years where you get a lot of players to go through, but you're looking for a top up of at least 2 or 3 players each year to make that step up. And it mightn't be players that, like, I know there's a few players that mightn't have started with my under 21 team, but went on and had unbelievable inter-county careers. Like even years before, Owen O'Flaherty, I don't think started every game with his under 21s, and he went on to have a serious football career. And look, there's elements like that there. You might find some diamond in the dirt. I know, like, even one of our club lads, Jack Quinn, serious footballer as well, but didn't even get in the panel for the All Ireland final and for a lot of the games. But they've had a serious campaign, and you'd like to think a good few of them would continue on, but it doesn't always work out like that. But I hope there's a lot of hope in Kildare that with the amount of underage success, a few of them will come through and keep up popping up 3 or 4 players each year, mixing that in with experience. Hopefully, will come into the senior team and really have a good go at championships.
If we're going to look at the actual game now itself, without being overly critical, it did feel in some respects that the under-20s were at times the architects of their own downfall against Tyrone. For me, anyway, watching the game, I didn't go down to Carrick now. I watched it on TG Carrick, but from what I could see, they were a better team for large parts of the game, and it was just that scoring conversion rate seemed to let them down slightly at times. They came out the traps in the second half, had a couple of chances, and I don't think they deserve to be 4 or 5 points down at half time by any means. Do you think, on reflection, there was a couple of chances rude, and maybe that 6-point loss should have been a bit shorter towards the end?
Yeah, probably. It's probably in the semi-final and the final, definitely they've probably left out a few chances that they probably could have taken on other days. And unfortunately, like you said, I don't think they deserve to lose by 6-7 points or whatever it was. They did have a few missed opportunities that probably on other days, like I said, they probably hit. But in fairness to Tyrone, they really capitalised on that. I would have felt as well kind of a bit harsh on the Kildare side, on any Leinster team coming through that. And I heard a bit about it, a few lads talking about it maybe in the media afterwards. Very, very harsh on the Kildare lads. They would have played non-stop over the last couple of months. And you could even see, I know it's preferred in the media, but you could even see in the last 10 minutes of the game, like there's a lot of young, fit men going down with cramp, going down, even that shouldn't be happening in a 60-minute game as such. And Tyrone probably had definitely in Ulster football, I was looking at even at the fixtures, they had a lot more breaks than the Kildare lads. And maybe that was an element of that freshness. And I heard Brian Flanagan in the lead up or after the game, he was saying that they didn't really have many training sessions in the last couple of weeks, like proper intense training sessions. Well, like a team would come on maybe leaps and bounds from a couple of training sessions, tough and training sessions, even in-house games, where Kildare probably weren't afforded that, which is probably maybe a problem with the system now at the moment, with Leinster being the biggest province, I suppose. But yeah, there probably was an element of their own demise with a few of the missed chances that they had. But look, like I said, they can look back on that under-20 career. Like that, getting to an All-Ireland final is no mean feat. Like it has been, looking at their games, like they did play top teams. Like that Sligo team went on, and I know they bet Mayo in a bit of a lucky goal at the end, but that was a great result. The Dublin game, that was an unbelievable game. Like there were some unbelievable performances there, and really they really put a good shining light on Kildare underage football. And that's kind of been the case over the last number of years. We've been lucky in terms of underage, where under 20s and under 21s, we've been thereabouts with teams.
And just to touch on that, because I agree with you. I mean, that class of 18, we'll say Davy Burke's team that won the All Ireland. You know, a lot of the current seniors came from that setup. Given the fact that you had the underage experience yourself, Tommy, like, how do you see what's important for an underage player to transition to senior? Like, is it avoiding the gun mad eyes out in college, or is it like the part-time job? Like, there's a lot of factors.
Yeah.
Like, what do you attribute that to, or how do you make that transition smoothly?
I would say, look, I was lucky enough where I was brought in straight away, and I didn't know, to be honest, I haven't known any different until from 16 really up until 28, 29, where I was always in kind of an elite setup. I suppose your own commitment to your own cause kind of, like, there's some lads that will go off, like I said earlier, like, intercounty football isn't for everyone. You might have the talent, but you mightn't have the head. And it's a bad thing to say, but there's some lads that I've seen that have been unbelievable footballers, but will never really get there because they really didn't have the level head, and they didn't go out, like we're saying, on the party nights out and stuff like that. I think I can definitely say for myself anyway, that's an element that I would have liked to think that I definitely crossed off the list, where I kind of would have been committed to that kind of element and keeping level-headed as much as possible. And that's one piece of advice I definitely give to the under 20s now, where go back to your clubs. I think it can't be stressed enough, lads. Kind of, and I think it's a pity in sometimes where players aren't given their full chance to their clubs. And lucky enough, if you look at Brian Flanagan and most of the intercounty setup at the moment, they can see that it's important that players play with their club, because if they're not making panels or if there's time off or anything like that, because if they don't, they won't learn. Like, there's only so much training you can do. You have to be playing games at a high level as much as possible to really push on. And look, that under 20 team, if they put their head down, a lot of them can continue on. Like, the few of the names that I named out, but there's more. Like, there's your boy from Kilcock and wing forward, the redhead, geez, man, I forget his name. Yeah, like, there's players like that I've seen anyway, and underage setups, and I've seen playing against them, that they definitely are up to that level. It's just keeping that level head and keeping the head down and saying, "Feck it, I'm just going to go for this." Like,
yeah, absolutely, yeah. And I'm sure they appreciate the wise words from yourself, Tommy. You've been there and you've done it all. If we can look at that Westmeath game now, moving on to seniors in that game on Sunday, without talking about it to death, I do want to chat about that Croke Park factor again. Because it just felt like it was night and day from that Tullamore game, to be honest with you. Like, in terms of, we'll say that the dominance that Kildare showed, and you'd arguably say that Louth are probably a better opposition than Westmeath, just given their recent league campaign. It's been a good few years since we've seen Kildare, really dominate in Croke Park.
Yeah.
Do you think, maybe take a different angle on it, do you think, given Glenn Ryan's experience there as a player, and obviously the likes of Early and Doyle and Rainbow of all the big games there as players, do you think that management setup can bring something to the team that maybe we haven't seen the last couple of years, and allow us to play to our full potential in GAHQ? Yeah,
look, I definitely think they will. If there's any man to do it, I remember the day that I heard John Guile got involved. Not close enough, but I know him fairly well. Like, been involved with our school team. I remember texting going, if there's any men to bring us out of the doldrums, it's definitely he anyway. It was a dream setup, like, so if there's anyone to get over that kind of Croke Park thing, I don't know if it's not a mental, I don't know if it's a mental block or anything like that. Like I said to you earlier, I always felt when we were going into Croke Park, like, we're going to play the best we can, we're going to play brilliant football and expansive football, but it just, I don't know, it hasn't seemed to be the case over the last number of years. Like, I don't know when it started happening or something like that, but the more it's been talked about, I suppose it's probably, the more it's been highlighted, the worse it's getting, if that makes sense. At least we got over Westmeath this time anyway, because there's other days where we would have lost, like, and there's plenty of improvements there. But yeah, with that setup, I think there's a steeliness about the team definitely over the last year. What I've seen anyway, any of the games that I've gone to, in particular that Dublin game in Newbridge, that came from that management team, like what they've done and the way they've set up and the training that they've done. I remember even chatting to Dan Flynn or listening to him on the media saying that they're going to cover every blade of grass in the Curragh and stuff like that. Like, I know it's kind of old school as well, but there is that element of kind of steel that you need there, that you get off them training sessions and get out of the management that will put in place that systems that will definitely work. So I'm hopeful that we'll get out, and the next day we'll be talking about a good win against Dublin, hopefully, more than anything.
I'm hopeful that it's going to be like that we're going to put in a better show in Croke Park, because the atmosphere is going to be better for a Leinster final, because the Dubs are going to bring 40, 50, 60. Hopefully we're going to bring 30, 40,000, and it can be as close to capacity crowd as possible. Because I don't think it's a Croke Park thing. I think it could be like an atmosphere thing.
Atmosphere, yeah.
Like
anytime we played in
this is a Leinster semi-final with 20, 30,000 people in it. And Emma Bolton a couple of weeks ago spoke about how eerie it is to play in Croke Park when there are only, or it might have been Lepper who said how eerie it is when there's only 20, 30,000 people in it. Like, and that's what I really think. Like, it would be such a lit. I've never played, and I've never been in a situation to play. You obviously have, Tommy. So could you give us sort of an insight into like how it is to play? Like, would you, as players, would you rather play in a semi-final in Tullamore with 9,000 people, like a packed 9,000 crowd, than in Croker with an empty 20,000 fans, as weird that is to say?
I think it's a no-brainer. I think it has to be out to the smaller grounds. Croke Park, yeah, I understand there's obviously a lure to it, but personally, I think it's a financial decision by the GA at times, where they're trying to get more supporters in, but it's not always the case. I don't know how many were there at the weekend. I think, was it 38,000 or?
I think it was 39 for the Dubs game, but for that Kildare game, I wouldn't be surprised if it was less than 30, to be honest. Yeah.
Like, and as much, I probably agree with Lepper, whoever said, I'm not too sure, that it does get eerie. And as much as you don't think it gets into the psychic or the game or anything like that, if the game, like, sometimes the crowd do get into the game, and like, you could see it even in our league games, let's say this year. When we were at home, I felt we were unstoppable at times, and the sport got really behind the team. And when you go into Croke Park and it's half empty, like, I was sitting close enough to the sideline. It shouldn't be the case that I can hear players talking in a Gaelic football game, like, realistically. And you could hear the players talk, roaring and shouting. And like, I played, probably one of the best atmospheres I played in was in Connacht's, which was unbelievable. Obviously, the Newbridge or nowhere, or we played Clare, down in Clare in Ennis, and they were unbelievable atmosphere, and you could hardly hear yourself think, never mind hear another player. And that's only with, I don't know how much Ennis could hold, but it was full that day. I think it was 9 or 10,000, and it was unbelievable atmosphere, and it probably adds to the game a lot more, and adds to the excitement, especially for supporters, where they can get behind a team. When you're in Croke Park, it's a sea of empty chairs, upper tiers empty. It's not the same. And you can definitely see, and the one example I say, you can definitely see within the hurling, the example there, even the Cork and Limerick game there at the weekend, that was in Croke Park. I don't know if it would fill out Croke Park, but it definitely wouldn't have been as helter-skelter would have felt. Yes, there would have been hits and everything like that, but the support being rightly on the pitch, and the hearing of the roars and the shouting, you wouldn't be able to hear a player that day anyway, I'd say. But like I said, unfortunately, at times I think it's a financial system. I think I heard a stat there that I think Meath have played more times in Parnell Park than Dublin have in the last 10, 15 years. Like that's ballistic. Like, that's meant to be their home pitch, which is outrageous. It's definitely a financial decision, in my opinion, anyway, from the GA. It's definitely something that has to be looked at in the future. Can we get the Leinster semi-final out of Croke Park and bring it into grounds, maybe Portlaoise, Tullamore, even Longford, Pierce Stadium, or any of these kind of, they're well able to hold games. And as well as that, it's probably good for the local people and businesses. I know when Newbridge has a game, there's the amount of people that go to the games, and it's great to see Dublin out of Croke Park as well, to be honest. I'm kind of biased in that behalf, I suppose.
I know, 100%. I suppose, it isn't all doom and gloom. Like, we stand like three men here who are the weekend. Like, we are in the Leinster final, and there are a couple of positives. I think as much as given out about the Croke Park factor, it's probably good that we had a game there, in advance of Leinster final, and it's if I'm not mistaken, it's Glenn Ryan's first game there as Kildare manager.
Yeah.
So even just to maybe get that out of our system, he can have a look at that over the next 2 weeks for that Dublin game. And another big positive, it's something that I think a lot of other counties would be quite envious of Kildare. Was the forward play yesterday. 121 in a Leinster Championship match in any game is a serious score to put up. And I was chatting to some of the lads before the game yesterday, some of my mates who went up to the match with, And, you know, that inside forward line of Hyland, Flynn and Kerwin is probably one of the most potent I can actually ever remember in a Kildare jersey. And I'm rightly on the hype train now, but honestly, I can't think of a better one really in terms of the three of them together. Well, in your opinion, Tommy, what did you make of that forward play yesterday?
Yeah, look, like you said, the scoring was unbelievable. Dara Kerwin there, I thought Dara Kerwin had a superb game. I thought he was excellent. When he got on the ball, he seemed to like, he was so busy. It's just getting about getting the ball, a good ball into them. Even if it's, look, I think Dara and Dan in particular, any kind of ball into them, they'll cause any kind of fear, especially Dan in particular. You try and keep with him for even fecking 5 steps, you're in the bother. No, I was slow, but Jesus, he's an absolute machine. And even his strength, and Dara Curran coming in there as well with high balls or even one bouncing balls, and then Jimmy coming off feeding off them was excellent. And at times that was unstoppable. And Ben McCormick, I think, again, his forward play was unbelievable. Getting ball into the lads, the few of the scores that he kicked were absolutely fantastic. And I think that's definitely something we have to rely on. And one area I'd say Dublin probably, even over the last years, I would always say is probably their full back line, even in the last couple of years. I think they're definitely there for the taking. And if we have a full forward line like that, we need to get the ball into them. I've full belief if we get the ball into them, they'll take a hell of a lot of defending to try and keep them any bit scoreless. Even if one has a bad day, I can guarantee you the other two definitely won't. That's how kind of how strong of a full forward line. And we've lads to come in, not to mention Neil Flynn, unbelievable over the last number of years. Paddy Woodgate has come back in there and into the pan and has been excellent during the league campaign. So we definitely have a number of options up front. It's about getting the ball into them. And I suppose one element that I would say that we probably need to look at is probably defensively, maybe making sure that we're not conceding the goal chances that we did the last day. We can't be conceding 3 goal chances against Dublin because all 3 will probably be put into the back of the net. Donlan pulled off a great save there I think it was in the first half, but we can't be conceding them goal chances and making sure that we're clogging up that middle. But if we get the ball quick into the lads, I can't see how any defence will stop them.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you. I think even if it's a case that, you know, you said about to man mark Dan Flynn, I mean, you can't man mark all 3 of them realistically, and all 3 of them are capable of putting in, you know, an absolutely show-stopping performance, and they have done in a Kildare jersey. So it's very exciting. Look, Tommy, we've taken up loads of time. Just one last question for me. I don't know if Brian maybe has another one as well. Just this Leinster final now. Here we are, you know, 2 weeks away. Unfortunately, it does seem the Dubs are hitting their stride. You know, as they get back out to Croke Park in championship mode. On this podcast, we are still hopeful of an upset in the day, and I think the bookies have it at a 6-point spread at the minute. If you were just to say in your heart of hearts, honest opinion, you know, what is realistic for this Kildare team against man?
I'm kind of like yourselves. I'm kind of fecking on the bandwagon here, to be honest, with the management set up and the way the lads play during the league. I do think, like you said, we probably have to have a perfect performance. And look, the lads are more than capable of it. Look, Meath the last day, and no disrespect to Meath at all. I played against them a number of times and been unbelievable, and the players there have been unbelievable. But they didn't put up a performance that you could say they didn't really have a cut off them. And that's one thing, I suppose, that Kildare really have to do. Like you said, we have a full forward line that could absolutely destroy any defence in the country. Get the ball into them as quick as possible. I do think there is a chance, as much as the bookies probably don't. But I do think there is a chance. But like I said, we do have to have a really, really good performance. It has to be improved. I heard Glenn even talking about it. We have to improve 10, 20% or whatever. They definitely do. Look, Dublin, obviously, after the league campaign, everybody was saying, Jesus, they're gone away and there's problems there and everything like that. She still has to. Yesterday, I had to leave at halftime. Couldn't keep on watching. They're that good. So hopefully, yeah, I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful that if we put in, like I said, a perfect performance, I suppose at times, we're definitely capable of it. Definitely capable of it. It's just getting our tactics right, clogging up that middle, making sure we can't concede them goal chances. Again, like we coughed up against Westmeath, and if we really sort out that problem, I think there is a good chance. Like up front, we're moving well. It's just them goal chances, and luckily enough, Dublin haven't scored that many goals this year either. So I'm looking at the positive stats anyway. So I'm hopeful.
Yeah, you have us convinced, Tommy. So yeah, a recurring theme that's crept into this podcast, Tommy, is this white collar boxing, and it all started back in episode 2 with Emma Bolton when he mentioned the white collar charity boxing fundraiser that was arranged back, I think it was 2010. You actually came into that panel in 2010, as you said, as a minor, so I'm sure you're familiar with a lot of the players.
Yeah.
Who would you have your money on to take the title as the 2010 white collar Kildare boxing champion of that era? So far we actually have Emma Bolton in the lead. He got Dave Slattery's vote. So
you got Dave Slattery's vote. Jeez. I remember Geezer used to bring us up to them MMA, and he's mad. He was mad into that MMA. I remember seeing Brian Flanagan hopping in rings, and I think there was a bit of dirt in him, or something was happening there. There was a bit so I give it to him maybe back then. All right. And then we actually had another one there with Keane O'Neill as well. And I remember looking at Dan Flynn and Luke Flynn at the time. 2 boys were proper boxers. Actually, I remember I went into a ring against somebody else. We were training for it. And I went into a ring and I got fierce cocky after it. I remember going in against Dan Flynn, and I remember nearly being flat out on my back after about 2 minutes. And thank God the bell rang. I was kind of just dazed altogether, looking, trying to look for a fucking rope to lean on at all. But between the two of them, I'd say Daniel Flynn, even if he wasn't, he's definitely the fucking champion of that year, and probably Brian Flanagan as well, the 2 Johnstown Bridgemen. There's something in the water over there.
I was going to say that, yeah. There's a recurring theme there as well.
Listen, Tommy, thanks a million for coming on. We've taken up a lot of your time, and hopefully we will bump into you maybe on one of Kildare's fixtures throughout the season.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks very much for having me in, lads.
Moolick's first touch, and it's a very good one as well.
That was Tommy Moolick. Really enjoyed that one, Kev. It was a bit, I was thinking halfway through it though when I was talking about the defeat to Kerry in the 2015 championship and the defeat to Dublin, that geez, this is all doom and gloom, even when we were talking about maybe not the best performance that we had against Westmeath in the semi-final, but appreciate his honesty. I thought that was a great one.
Yeah, I'd say Tommy's probably gone for a couple of pints now to take the edge off that conversation. I know, fairness to him, he's an absolute legend. He was a great crack there, and like he was very honest about his exiting of that, Kildare panel under Derek O'Connor. So we do appreciate that honest conversation, And sure, look, he has us totally G'd up now. Like I think we have good times ahead. I don't know what you think, Bruno.
Yeah, as I said earlier on, that I wasn't as bullish before, after the Westmeath game as I am now. But back to it now, he's got me back in the mindset of a deep run into this All Ireland series, and I do think we can. Like, it's what he said about the atmosphere thing in Croke Park, about how we know the Dubs are going to travel. They don't really have to travel far, but we need every bit of support we can to sort of match the Dubs and to really cheer the ball over the crossbar every time, because I don't think you can underestimate how much of a difference it makes to the players on the pitch. Like every guest we've had on and every former intercounty players, they've all sort of said how the atmosphere really can lift it up. So hopefully we can travel in numbers on the 28th of May, Saturday 28th of May. Unfortunately now, even though I'm saying that, I'm not in the country on that date, so I won't be able to go. I'm sure I'll be in an Irish pub somewhere. I know you'll be flying the flag, though, Kev, for Lilies Livin. Are you going to go to the Hill again? You're in the Hill for the semi-final against Westmeath?
I won't. No, I'll leave it off for that one. I'm going up with the Owl lad. I know he listens to this podcast, so this is me telling him in advance that he's not able for it anymore. He probably thinks it's a good few years left on him, bashing off the Dubs in the Hill 16. So no, I'm going to avoid that one. I'm going to go up with a couple of lads and the brother and the Owl lad. Get a nice spot in the Hogan, and really looking forward to it now. Like you won't make it there yourself, Brian, unfortunately, but you'll be back in the county town on the Sunday for the pints and celebrations the next day after we we get our hands at Leinster title for the first time in 22 years. What should I make of that?
I will be. I'll land late enough Sunday evening, but I'll get straight down to Nice for the celebrations. Hopefully, I'm sure they will still be going on if we are successful. So we've all that to look forward to. We've another great guest on in the meantime next week. I'm really looking forward to recording next week's show. That's all we have time for this week. If you do have any questions or feedback for us, do get us on our socials on Twitter at Lilies Livin Pod and on Instagram at Lilies Livin, and we will get to them next week with our next guest. So we will talk to you then.